We Saved You a Seat is sponsored by the Oklahoma Family Network. Oklahoma Family Network focuses on supporting families of children and youth with special health care needs and disabilities, as well as families who have children with a mental health or behavioral health diagnosis. Oklahoma Family Network provides families with emotional support, resource navigation, parent-to-parent engagement opportunities, and wants to ensure quality health care for all children and families by building strong and effective family-professional partnerships. I'm incredibly excited about the opportunity for you to hear from Lisa Lawter today with the Oklahoma Deaf-Blind Project. Lisa is passionate about helping and serving families who have children with unique medical needs, and I know you will enjoy learning more about Oklahoma Deaf-Blind Project and the incredible families that they serve. Thank you so much for spending your morning with me today, just to teach me about the project that you are a part of. As part of this podcast, I love learning about new programs, the projects out there. I love learning about family stories. So what's the technical term? It's Oklahoma Deaf-Blind Project?
It's Oklahoma Deafblind Technical Assistance Project, but we typically say Oklahoma Deafblind Project. Uh, we leave out the technical assistance
Sounds
part of
very formal with the technical assistance. It's like,
yeah.
oh, what fits in that? What fits in that category?
And maybe
So.
they think that it's equipment and IT stuff, but it can be, but that's not all that it is.
So
Yeah.
why don't you just start out by telling us a little bit about you maybe, and then we'll kind of jump into, your why and how you got involved in this, and then
Okay.
the nit and gritty of
Of
what
the project.
exactly the program is and how it impacts our Oklahoma citizens.
I've always been a special educator. My undergraduate degree is in special ed. My master's degree is in school administration, where I really sat through every class going, I don't want to do this. Then I had a lot of friends that were going back to school to work on their PhDs. And so I just did that. I had no children at the time. And so it kind of filled up my time. And while I was there, Catherine Herring and David Lovett were kind of in charge of the special ed department at OU, and they were really good grant writers. And they brought the Deafblind Project to OU. There is a Deafblind Project in every state. So they knew about it because they had lived in another state. And before David and Catherine came on, our state was sending the money back. They were sending it back to Washington. So we started out in a collaboration between the State Department of Ed and the university, and I was a graduate student, and they hired me part time to be a technical assistant specialist. And really, there's no training programs. There was at that time one in at Boston College for deafblindness. Then the national system was organized a little bit different. So we had regions back then, and there would be regional training, and that's all we got. I mean, and in Oklahoma, there's no um, higher ed training program for kids with severe disabilities. So we kind of got it all. So Jan Watts was the director before me, and she and I just kind of figured it out, on our own. The project's never been well funded. We've never had a lot of money. And so Jan would go to all the national meetings, and she would come back and she would tell me, and then we would go out and see kids together. And so we kind of learned from each other. But the good thing about this national group, because every state has a project, we do rely on each other. So if I don't know the answer, I can, I talk to the person in Michigan a lot. She's a Boston College graduate. So I really trust her knowledge. And we have a system where, somebody's like, oh, have you ever worked with a child with, some kind of a syndrome and a rare syndrome? And then we can all chime in, yes or no if we have. So that's kind of how the project got started and really got rolling in Oklahoma. We collaborate with the State Department, but now the funding goes straight to OU, not through the State Department. And that was just for convenience. It was, trying to go through two big systems, and it really slowed us down. So now and most projects go through a university, not a state department. So that just lined us up with, kind of the national trend. So in Oklahoma, we rewrite this grant every 5 years. So we're in year number 3 of this grant cycle. And to qualify for our project, a student has to have a loss in both vision and hearing. And the visual impairment is 20/70 or worse. So, probably without my glasses, I might be 20/70. On the vision side of it, it also includes cortical visual impairment, which is the largest population we have on our census. And this is where your eyes and your brain do not communicate. So their vision is fine. They're going to get 20/20, and the eye doctor's going to say, "God, healthy eye, no astigmatism, you're great." But they do not understand what they're getting visually. So, and those kids typically have more significant disabilities, and some common things are like shaken baby. Some syndromes, it comes along with that. So anytime the brain is kind of compromised, I think there's a risk for cortical visual impairment. So the early interventionist and the families are all going to say, nope, he's not blind because the doctor's report says. But then we go one step further and go, well, let's see how he uses his vision. Then on hearing, it's a mild, moderate, severe, or profound loss. There's kind of the basic categories. That has really changed with the technology of cochlear implants. So that has made a humongous difference in our services and what kids can get and they don't get. And if they have cochlear implants, we still serve them, because when you make that decision to use cochlears, you lose any hearing you have. And so, as all good technology, sometimes it doesn't work. And so we want, families and schools to know, okay, if, the cochlears aren't working today and the vision's not that great, here are some things you can do, you know and the cochlears, they don't hear like you and I hear, so it is different, anyway. There's one syndrome called Usher syndrome, and on this syndrome, children are born deaf, and then as they get older, they lose their vision. So even though they may have vision at age 3, 4, 5, or 7, um, we will go ahead and take them because we know that vision's going to go. And so, we can kind of help prepare for that and support them through that. And that's the most common syndrome, but there are other syndromes that are like that there's a real risk for them losing their vision or hearing later on. And so if there's a high risk, we'll go ahead and take them just so we can, make sure everybody's thinking about that and looking out for that child.
So, families who receive this genetic diagnosis, is that something that typically they notice like inside an NICU? Do they receive that diagnosis pretty early?
Yes, they do receive it pretty early because of that early hearing detection. And so, but they might not get the Usher diagnosis for a little bit, but they'll know early, that the baby doesn't hear. So,
We can thank our hearing detection and special screening services for some of
yeah,
these early diagnostic
yeah,
processes and procedures that get us plugged
that's
into
true.
early intervention. So that is fantastic.
Mhm.
Okay, so do y'all help serve the entire state of Oklahoma as a project?
So we're statewide, and when I say we, it's mainly me. There is another person who helps 10 hours a week, and she does a lot of work with the families. And then I'm the rest. And in Oklahoma, we have 175 kids on our census, and we stay about that number. And a big part, or there's four goals of this project, and the first one is identification. So we do a lot of work on sending information out to get kids referred to the project. And then if they meet that loss of vision and hearing, then, we put them on immediately. And even if they, like I said earlier, if they have a syndrome that we know the risk of losing both vision and hearing is a part of that, then we'll put them on. And then for young babies, like especially if they're born deaf or born blind, we might take them and watch them. And then as they get older and develop, and even older when they kind of understand what the vision test is all about or the hearing test is all about, we can always take them off. But I always like to put them on early because we don't want to miss them. Cause it's not like in a special ed world where you have to have a meeting and everybody has to come together. They can just show me, oh, here the doctor said, good hearing, good vision, and I just remove them. So it's easy on, easy off is what we try to do. So if a baby or a child is referred, I'll call the families and get more information, and then I'll call the school. And with this, I like in the perfect world to be able to go out to see every family that is a new referral. And then based on my observation, I can tell what kind of resources we have or what kind of resources I need to look for. And then, so that's kind of the basic level of technical assistance that we do. Then this next level is more intensive, and that would be like a family or school. It can be either calls and said, we want you to come out. We don't know, where to go with this kiddo. And then I go and we'll talk about, what's happening and what I see and resources that we have and strategies that might be helpful. And then we'll talk about, do you want me to come back? Do you want this to be a regular a meeting that we have? And so I'll, at that point, we'll schedule all that and I'll go back multiple times. Like we've had one kiddo, I think she's probably 22 now. We've had her since she was 3. So we followed her through preschool, elementary, all the way through high school. And sometimes, it all lines up. The school's on track, the family's on track, the kid's developing. And so I may only be in that school for a year, or it can be like that little girl I just said, and I was in her school every year for her entire career. It kind of depends on the kids. And the range of kids that we see are kids with who are very medically fragile. Maybe they're on a ventilator, to children who, like I said, have ushers who are probably going to go to college. So, and everything in between. And children with deaf blindness are all unique, and we all want to say that about all kids, and that's true, but they're very unique. I mean, like sometimes a kiddo will have vision on the left side and hearing on the right side, or, they may have uh, like be totally blind but have just a mild hearing loss. Or it can be the opposite. They see pretty well with glasses, but they don't have hearing. So they're all, it is in my career now, I think I've been in this 40 years, not with the Deafblind Project, but in special ed for 40 years. I have to be the most creative, you, and really think about how does this child experience their world with the vision they have and the hearing they have. And all of them have communication issues. So after that initial visit, usually the first recommendations are communication. How are we communicating with him, and how is she communicating with us? and then trying to get a way for them to express themselves in a way that everybody can understand. And that sometimes is a lifelong goal.
So you actually can go into the schools and work with the schools. Is that as just getting involved in the IEP process, or do you actually work one-on-one with some of the educators and maybe some of the school staff? Walk us through just a little bit about that, because I'm sure there are some people out there that are like, as a parent, I would love to get you involved in my school and to help us out. So where would we start?
Right. I don't typically attend IEP meetings because I think that's all I would do, with 175 kids. So what will happen is I'll go in and I'll observe, and then we'll have a meeting with the teacher and the family, and based from that conversation, we'll decide, and I always recommend, like, we have a few assessments that are observational, basically. So we'll kind of work with that, and the parents will do one, the teachers will do one, and we'll look at that data. And then there's some things that, like, especially for young children, they really need to trust the adult in the room. And so, helping everybody understand that this little guy's not going to come in here and be great guns. He might throw mad fits because he's scared, not because he's being defiant, but he's nervous, he's anxious, and he needs that person. So we talk a lot about building a trusting relationship early on. We talk a lot about communication, and then if we get going, we talk about how are we going to modify this, and how are we going to teach this child concepts and not just motor him just through the day. How is he going to learn what a tree is? How is he going to learn what cold and hot are? And then we help kids get through, DRS services so they can get their college paid for, so it's a lot of that. And for families, we have a lot of resources. The National Center on Deaf Blindness is a fabulous resource. And so I do send out at least quarterly something to the families just to think about. Maybe it's like, this afternoon I'm going to send out something about fun things to do in the summer, but it also might be, here's some information about DDSD. We try to get everybody signed up for those services, just, because we don't know what tomorrow may bring, and we'll be prepared.
Walk me through what that referral process looks like. So if I'm a family, or does it just come from schools? Tell us a little bit about that.
The referrals come from families or schools, and the form's a little bit intimidating. But honestly, if a family wants to refer or a school wants to refer, they just fill out that first part, which is all the demographic information: name, date, phone number. Then the last page, have the parents sign the release of information form. We're good to go. And so from that, I can fill in everything else. And like I said, we do a census that's reported to the National Center on Deaf Blindness, that then is reported to Washington, to the Department of Education. And you're thinking, well, why don't they just count that in child count? But what happens is, because our categories are, of the different categories, many times these children are categorized as having multiple disabilities, or maybe deaf, or maybe just blind. But because the way the child counts reported, it can't capture both. And there is a deafblind category, but sometimes multiple disabilities is the better category for them to be served in special ed. So that's why we do our own. But it's super helpful to be able to talk to the families. And I try to call every family every year, which is a trick, but I try to get an update from the families, just so, especially if they're switching schools, and we do guide a lot through those transitions from sooner start to school. That's a big jump. Middle school, I mean, elementary to middle school is a big jump. And so, and it kind of anxiety ridden for families, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, I even with typically developing children, parents have anxiety, and so I can only imagine what that feels like to
Mhm.
feel like you're dropping your kid off with, you're their trusted person with other people.
Right.
So absolutely. Do children, do they eventually age out? Is this, an 18, do we have transition at that point?
Right. It's birth to 21 are our services. But now that Oklahoma has extended their transition services, I mean, we'll stay with them until, you know, they exit schools. And that's a big deal for our group. You know, that's a big deal. That's valuable, valuable time.
Tell me a little bit about the opportunities you provide for families.
Yes, we have training. That's one of our goals that we were funded for. So it's traditional, you know, workshop kind of things, 2 day workshops. Now everything has gone virtual, but we might try to get back in person again. So we're kind of in between on that. It also includes intervener training. So interveners are basically paraprofessionals who have gone through training, and there's two avenues for training. One are online modules, and they were created by the National Center on Deaf Blindness. And what the center did was they got every expert in the field of deaf blindness together, and they created these modules. So it's like you've got the best of the best. You've got the most knowledgeable people who created these modules. So they're very powerful, and it's not easy. There's 27 of them, and right now we have a contract with the State Department that if a paraprofessional is working with a child with deaf blindness, they can enroll in the online coursework, and we pay them a stipend of $2,700, which is $100 a module, for completing the modules. The second avenue is a university program, and it leads to national certification. So you can be a nationally certified intervener, meaning you can work in any state you want with this national certification. We go through Central Michigan University for that. They offer it. I think Utah State offers one too, but I've been working with Central Michigan University, and it's online. All of it is online, and they must be actively working with a child with deaf blindness. So they need to be a dedicated paraprofessional. They go through all the coursework, and then they create a portfolio that is submitted for national certification. So it's a big deal. It's not easy. What I hear from the people who have completed both the modules and the national certification through Central Michigan is that you kind of get it through the modules, but you really understand the family perspective more from the Central Michigan University program. So I think right now I'd have to count, but I think we have 7 nationally certified interveners, and 5 of them are actively working. And I already have, we can only support 2 through the Central Michigan program, and we pay the Deafblind Project with a contract from the State Department pays for the tuition. So really, if a person is interested, all they really end up paying for is there's a fee to apply to Central Michigan University, and then there's a fee you have to pay to submit your portfolio at the end, and that's all. That's all they pay for. Everything else is paid for. And if they do the modules before, you know, they have all that background knowledge to pull from. And then, of course, working with the child. It's a sweet deal. It's a sweet deal.
How long does it take to work through those?
27 of them, and we like them to do one a week. But life always happens. And so oftentimes, we don't finish in exactly 27 weeks. What we don't want is for people to rush through them because they are full of information. Like I've gone through them multiple times, and every time I learn something new. And then on the Central Michigan University, it's 3 semesters. And that program, because that portfolio is huge, they do pieces of it in every one of the classes. So when they're finished in that third semester, they have a large portion of the portfolio completed. So they just have a little bit more to do.
That's fantastic. I mean, someone who's very dedicated to learning more and to the students and to the population. I think that's
Yeah.
powerful. That's a great
Yes.
opportunity. How do they access, if they were interested, is the application process is for not only the education, but also maybe the referral process? Is that online? Do they print it out?
The referral form is online on our website, and or they can just contact me and I will send it to them. So, and then I mail out every year, I mail out to the larger school districts or any school district that we are currently serving. And then it goes out on the State Department website as well. And then I send it out to agencies too, like the Oklahoma Family Network. Everybody gets one there, and Oklahoma Parent Center gets them. There's not so much in the Oklahoma City area, but in the Tulsa area, there's preschools for children who are deaf and children who have multiple disabilities. So, I reach out to them. So I do try to disseminate widely, and I'm always open to more. NICU units in the hospital. The website is ou.edu/OKDBP. And then our phone number for the project is 405-325-0441. And our email is okdeafblind at ou.edu.
When most people think about deaf-blind interactions and people that we know or have heard of, we think of Helen Keller.
Right.
And so I wanted, has she really impacted this as far as was she kind of part of this, or how have you guys arranged your awareness month? Because I think June celebrates her
Mhm.
birthday. And then what are some things that you guys do to honor that and that whole experience with Helen Keller?
It's really kind of left up to every state to do something. And DRS has celebrated Helen Keller's birthday regularly, and I don't know, for at least the last 15 years, but I think it's been longer than that. Yeah, definitely Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan have influenced the field. Basically, Annie Sullivan was the first intervener. And so, and like tactile signing, at the water well where Anne she's teaching her about water and she does it in her palm. I mean, that's the real deal. That really happens. And for people, it's very amazing to watch people do tactile signing. I still, and sometimes they even have to finger spell stuff. And it's amazing to watch that. Really, how the Deafblind projects got started was a rubella outbreak, and that's how the projects got started because, kids were getting rubella and losing their vision and hearing. And so the government said, we've got to intervene here, we've got to do something. And so they started the projects then. We love having Helen Keller as our model. I definitely think Helen Keller she had some vision and hearing along the way to make her to as successful as she was. And I think that's a real common misperception too about deaf blindness. It's like totally blind, totally deaf, and it's not. Like I said earlier, you can have hearing in one ear and not the other, or vision in one eye and not the other. It doesn't have to be a total loss because they experience their world so much differently. if they only hear out of one side, or if they, 2200 is legally blind, they can see, but it's super duper blurry, So I think that just that awareness that their world is different and we need to modify and accommodate for that.
I think that's powerful. I think that allowing this intervention for our children in the state of Oklahoma, I think this is just fantastic, and I cannot thank you enough for just sharing what Oklahoma Deafblind Project is about.
Well, good. I appreciate the opportunity and I hope I covered everything, but really and truly, I mean, I will visit with any family. And, again, if you just kind of suspect it, it's fine to refer them and we can chat about it and, go from there. So, it won't, no one will waste their time by calling me and saying, hey, we'll either take them on or we'll find someplace a referral for them.
I appreciate the work that you do, so thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to this episode of We Saved You a Seat. Oklahoma Family Network promotes family-centered care and provides tools so families can make informed decisions, advocate for improved services, build connections among families, and serve as a trusted resource in health care of children and young adults. If you would like to become a supporting family or get in touch with another family, please contact Oklahoma Family Network at oklahomafamilynetwork.org or by calling 405-271-5072.